Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Soul Focused Radio. This is your host, Martin Friedman, and I'm excited, as always, to be joined by our CEO, Mahdi. How you doing, Mahdi?
I'm doing fine, Martin. It is so wonderful, man, being on this podcast and being able to reach all the millions of people that we're reaching. And we want to keep encouraging people to keep emailing us, sending us messages, letting us know how this is landing on you. Thank you so much for your support.
Absolutely, and the feedback that we get has been amazing, really. Because
Yes.
we know we're impacting folks, and I would say, Mahdi, we are having an impact on people because we are having an impact on ourselves.
Oh, man, that's a mouthful right there, Martin. Really,
Absolutely.
because a lot of people talk that talk, but they don't walk the walk. And at the Soul Focus Group, we walk the walk. So it's not just us blowing smoke up somebody's butt. We are really focused on being our best selves and maximizing our full potential as human beings.
100%, 100%. Every day, I think like this is what I get to do every day. Even the days that I'm tired, things are a little bit hard for whatever reason, or just like this is what I get to do every day. It's
Amazing,
like
right?
it's amazing. It is. It is. It is. So, Mahdi, I really wanted to talk to you about something that I've been thinking about a lot, and that's crucial to the Soul Focus Group. We have our 5 phases now, and the 4th phase is called powering up your communication. And
Powerful workshop, by the way, powerful workshop.
Yeah, it is a powerful workshop, and I've done a couple recently. And one of the things that I've seen is that people don't analyze their communication very much at all. Like, I think communication is one of the things that we take for granted that is so impactful in our lives. And it's kind of a revelation sometimes for folks to really step back and really take a deep examination of their communication. And what I really wanted to talk to you about, because this has been coming up for me and for us, is I really want to talk to you about the biggest communication problem that we have right now. And I want you to talk about that. What is the biggest communication problem that we have right now?
Well, let me say this, because it's not that we have right now. I think we've always been having this communication problem, go back hundreds of maybe thousands of years. But more so now is being, completely exploited, the idea that we have this big problem in communication. I think it starts with us not even understanding what communication is. In a fast-paced society such as our society, if you think about America, America grew up at 200 years. It's almost like a 200-year-old country, right? Nation. That's fast-paced to grow. And you have to ask yourself, what things were skipped over to grow that fast, And oftentimes we don't examine that. I think about my mom and dad when they were married. They divorced when I was 5, but before they divorced, they used to fight all the time. I mean, literally, there would be, bloody fights in the house. And I was terrified as a young child watching this and feeling paralyzed, not being able to do anything about it. But it was then I began to realize 2 things that were, even at 5 years old, it may be hard to believe. I realized there were 2 things that were missing. Number one, communication was not present. There was no communication other than through physical abuse or verbal abuse. That was the length of the communication. And the other thing was power. Power was missing from the equation. Both of them were not in their power, didn't have a sense of it. And so when you talk about communication, you can't help but talk about the dynamics of power, where power really comes from, and the dynamics of representation, which is, I would say, are the 2 biggest problems in communication. The lack of accurate representation from the beginning, which leads to disempowerment or a feeling of powerlessness. And I would like for us to talk about that in its entirety, and more so talk about it in the terms of relationships and situations and examples, so that people could really get this, because this particular podcast should really blow up the internet. If you're serious about transforming your life, if you listen to this and you want to transform your life immediately, communication is like central. Understanding what the biggest problem with communication is even more important.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. So let's jump in. I mean, so let's jump in and let's start talking about relationships and real life examples. Let's go.
Well, when I think about, when I first started dating, right?
Hmm.
And I didn't have very much confidence as a young teenager. And, I grew up very poor. So I was trying to hide that in the background, even though we lived in this very small country town. And I thought, being poor and not having very much, because we lived with my grandmother in a shotgun house,
Mhm.
no inside plumbing. They were infested with roaches and rats. She did the best she could, but it was third world conditions. And so when I would approach a young lady, I would always communicate in a way to hide my background
Right.
because I didn't want them to know what where I was coming from because I thought that was a strike against me.
Right. Right.
And so I would make the first communication error, and that is to misrepresent what's in your background, right?
Right.
Because real confidence, real power comes from you accurately representing what's in your background. Like if I would say to them, "This is what my condition is really is," and then give them an opportunity to choose if they still wanted to be with me or not, then you would have a better way of knowing that they really wanted to be with you. But
Right.
when we hide what's in the background and they choose us, then what that does, it creates doubt in our mind because we know we didn't accurately represent ourselves. So
Right.
from that point on, you don't really think they want you. You're
Right.
thinking they want your imposter. They want your person you're pretending because you didn't accurately represent what's in the background. Not just your physical conditions, but what's in the background inside of you. What's in you. So I like to start there when people think about relationships and dating, how most of us misrepresent ourselves. People would say like we're on our best behavior the first 3 months, and then all of a sudden the real us starts coming out. And we have to ask ourselves this question: why is it such a pattern, such a habit, a tendency in our society for us to misrepresent ourselves in the first place? Because that is the biggest problem in communication, the
Right.
constant, ongoing misrepresentation of who we are.
Hmm. Yeah, I think
What do you
that's.
think about that, Martin?
Well, I think it's a great starting place, right? Because that is that's the place. Like, on dating sites, people start with even just like filtering their picture, right?
Right.
Don't even like if you haven't met them in person yet. So you're talking
Man,
about
that
the
is
the
a
days when
trip.
we actually, yeah, we. So the first communication that most people have is seeing and then reading, right?
Yeah.
So so people often don't put a picture that accurately represents who they are right now and then what they write about themselves. So you're talking about the days when you actually were standing in front of the person, right?
Yes. Yes. And
And they were standing in front of you,
right, but you're right. To modern times, because I did a dating site a while back, you
Yeah,
know, and I met up with person that I connected with online, and
yeah,
the picture was real nice, and
yeah.
and then when I walked into the restaurant, I was like, shit, what happened? You know what I'm saying?
And
I'm not trying to shame anybody. It was
no,
a total misrepresentation. And what people don't understand is that you are setting yourself up for hurt
right,
if you misrepresent yourself and then you create, let's say, you misrepresented the background of your life, and then as the stuff start coming up, and then people find out the background, and they decide because it's their choice if they want to deal with it or not. If they
right,
don't want to deal with you, then here you have invested all of this into someone, and then now the truth comes out, and they don't want to make that investment in you because you inaccurately represented yourself. And it's not just there, it's in every part of our life. But I like to talk about these relationship things because people now are like down with misrepresentation. There's so much misrepresentation going on until it's really ridiculous when you think about it.
and it's not like it's gonna come out, right? So I get it. Like I think, I mean, I get the logic behind it. Like, well, I just need them to meet me and
I fall
know
in
my
love with my
personality
personality.
exactly, exactly. So I no, I get that, and maybe it's worked for people, but trying to build a relationship off of a lie, which is really what we're saying. And, you know, I think this is a great opportunity, my D, for folks listening to us to just take a minute and think about how have you inaccurately represented yourself in relationship.
Bam, baby.
Yeah.
Because, you know, to be honest with you, when I went to those, you know, because it happened more than one time. So I just said, man,
Yeah.
I'm not going to deal with these dating sites at all
Yeah.
because it's so ego based. You know, play on your ego,
Right.
and you know they are presenting their ego to you, not who they really
Right.
are. So what I
Right.
would do is I would enjoy the lunch. I would, you know, because I usually go on a lunch, and then, you know, I would have conversations with them, and then, you know, just enjoy the conversation as a human being, to
Right.
human being. But as someone I was attracted to, no. See, I could talk to anybody and see value in everybody, but seeing value in someone does not equate to you wanting to spend your time with someone in a
Yeah.
romantic sense. It does not mean that at all. So a lot of people be like, well, you know, you do this work as a life coach, you should have saw value in. Oh, yeah, I saw value in all of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but there's a different kind of value when you see value just in a human being versus the value in a human being that you want to spend and possibly become romantic with.
Right. And I'll use the example of my, you know, my current relationship, my marriage, right? So, you know, Felicia and I had met each other a few times. So we'd seen each other in person. We'd met each other a few times. We knew there was some attraction there
But
after
you
I
didn't
had left
believe she
my
wanted
other
you. You didn't
relationship.
believe she wanted you.
No, I didn't. No, not until she told me. Not until that second glass of wine, and she told me. But, you know, we'd already met a few times. I had left my last relationship, and, you know, and she told me straight up, and I was like, okay, and I know you know this because
Yeah, because
it's
I mean,
cheating because you were coaching me. You
tell
were
you, man,
coaching me during that time.
Felicia likes you, man, and you were like,
I
nah,
know.
bro, nah, that can't be true.
Right, exactly. So once I was convinced of it, so, you know, it became clear that, you know, there was some good attraction going on there, and we were going to meet up, and, you know, that there was probably going to be some physical intimacy, shall we say, you know. And so I'm gonna tell on her. She sent me she sent me a text, but I really called it more like an intake form. You know what I mean? Like, she sent me a text like asking me like my sexual history and like all kinds of stuff. I'm like, this woman just sent me an intake form, right? But I still went. You know, I still went on the date. And I joked with her about it. You know, it was hilarious. Um, and then when I got there, you know, the first night we spent together, we actually spent most of the time just telling each other our entire stories, like as much
Wasn't
as
that
we could.
beautiful? Wasn't that beautiful
Like
though? Wasn't that
it
beautiful?
was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was unexpected. It was beautiful. She's like, I want to know everything about you. I want to know the trauma. I want to know the good things. I want to know the things you struggle with. I want to know the things you're ashamed of. And she did the same with me.
Martin, why was that so relieving for you? Because I get the sense that it was like relieving, you know, to be able to do that. You know, it's like just getting undressed and completely naked, not nude, but completely naked,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Like, yes, and um, yes, and but and neither one I was like super comfortable with, to be honest with you. So I'm like, so I think the relief came because, you know, look, you know me really well. I think the listeners, some listeners know me really well, and some listeners are starting to get to know me. But, you know, I have been in a shameful place, in a place where I was hiding stuff my whole life, and I felt like I had something to hide my whole life. And so the relief came with this person saying, "Look, there's attraction here, but in order for this to work, we need to see each other, warts and all. We need to see each other in all ways, and then we can make an informed decision." And I think the relief of not having to hide shit anymore, because I hid so much. I've made amends to my former partner. You know, I hid how much I gambled. I hid a lot. And entering into this relationship which was my next relationship after that, real relationship after that. It was the relief was I don't, because it takes energy to hide, bro. You know
Oh
that
man,
it takes energy to
Martin,
hide,
it takes
man.
more energy to hide than to come clean. It really
Exactly.
does. Because once you come clean, then it's all done.
Right.
It's really all done.
Right.
You know, and if
Yes.
then the person is left with having a choice. And if they
Yes.
choose you after you've come clean, then guess what? It's clean. You have a
Yes.
clean slate to work with. You have, you know, it's like fertile soil to plant the seeds in to grow your relationship.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. And so, you know, that's that. That's the relief. But I'll say this too. It was awkward and uncomfortable at first. It's like if you've been walking wrong your whole life and now all of a sudden you're going to start walking correctly. You know what I mean? Like you get
Yeah.
some insoles to correct your feet or
It's
whatever.
it's not going to happen. You know why it's not going to happen?
What is that?
Because misrepresentation is a habit.
Yeah.
And once it
Right.
becomes a habit, you don't even realize yourself that you're misrepresenting yourself. To you,
Right.
it's occurring as your reality. But if you slow down the tape and you watch your life and your relationship in slow motion, you're like, oh
Yeah.
shit, I misrepresent myself all the time.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
you walk in misrepresentation, you walk in a sense of powerlessness because power comes from our authentic self. So every time we are withholding or hiding our truth, you're also hiding your power. You're putting your power in the dark rather than bringing it into the light.
So wouldn't you agree then that there is an awkwardness when you start to live your life in the light and out of the darkness? It feels funny at first. To me, I'll just speak for myself. Like it didn't feel right at first because I was so used to having something to hide. I've told this story before, but she asked, to share a location. Her and her daughter shared location, and she asked me to share location with her. And my first thought was, hell no. Like no, because I definitely wouldn't have shared location with my last partner, because I
Right,
didn't want her to know where I was. I didn't want
right,
her to know like how many times I was at the casino and the card room and all that stuff, and how
right.
many
But
times I
at
went to
some point,
McDonald's and all that
at
other
some
shit.
point, they was gonna have to deal with that, right? Well, they were gonna have to deal with
Right.
that. Felicia if you didn't come clean with it, see, coming clean with it allows you to be able to be not just free, but honest from this point on. You have no
Right.
you have no reason to create any things in your mind about why this person ain't gonna accept you. You had already told them everything, and you've given them the chance to choose you based upon the accurate representation of your background, the accurate representation of what's inside yourself, because that's our responsibility. It's our
Right.
responsibility.
No, I totally agree with you. And ultimately, when I asked myself, I said, well, why wouldn't I want to share location? Because there's certainly good arguments for it in terms of safety and all that stuff. And I couldn't come up with a good answer other than I would want to keep hiding. And I'd already made the decision. Her and I had made the decision together that we weren't going to hide from each other in any way in this relationship. So once I said I'm going to share location, there's never been one time that I've been like, you know, I don't want her to know where I am right now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because it's like,
I want to talk about something that you just mentioned.
yeah, yes,
The idea that it's safety, right? Because our ego gives us a lot of fodder to put up as excuses for why we don't come clean, right?
right,
So we
right,
say, well, I could get hurt if I come clean with the truth. But what are you doing is prolonging. If you think that you coming clean is could lead to you being hurt, then you have almost guaranteed that you're gonna be hurt later by withholding it, right? And so then
right,
you
right,
build all of your hopes on a lie, and then your life is spent what? Trying to hide it, keep it away from people, hoping that nobody ever finds out. And then, like in
right,
every drama and every soap opera you see on television, sooner or later, boom, somebody reveals your shit. And then, boom, you got to deal with that. Now, your whole house is coming tumbling down
that's
because you
right,
built it on something that wasn't real. And your ego could have you believe that you did it out of safety. Yeah, you might have did it out of safety, but guess what? You didn't do it out of strength.
right,
If you do it out of strength, doing it out of strength will lead you to accurately represent yourself. If you do it out of weakness and you use the term safety, then this will
right,
come back to bite you.
right. No, I agree with you 100%. I really do. I think the thing I keep coming back to, because what you're talking about is entering into a practice of honesty.
Yes,
That the
yes.
the biggest communication problem we have is that we're not honest with
We're
each
not
other. At
honest.
least certainly one of them, anyways, right? That we're
Yeah.
not honest with each other, and that's a
I would say that's
practice.
number one, Mark.
That has to become habitual, right?
Yeah, I would
Because
say
the
that's
other,
number one.
yeah,
That
yeah,
everybody's
yeah,
lying.
right.
Not only are we
Everybody,
lying in our relationships, we're lying in our finances, we're lying in our
mm,
spiritual walk, we're lying in our social, our like platonic relationship, we are lying all over the place,
right,
and we look at the world is manifesting our lies. We're seeing our lies come back at us because we are being drowned by problems. You can't solve a problem with lies.
right,
Impossible.
right. No, you're right. You're right. And that's crazy to think about that. That's really what we're trying to do, right? Because we talk about it all the time. Can't solve a problem with the same thinking that got you in it. You
And I
know,
would add this:
can't.
you can't
Yeah,
solve a
yeah. Go
problem
ahead.
with the same lie that created it.
Right. That's right. Well, that's the same thinking that got us into it was lying,
Exactly.
right? You know,
Exactly.
I mean, literally, right? We talk about it all the time. Just, I mean, it's everything, but just race. Like the idea that you can tell, you know, like how smart or how safe somebody will be or anything based on their skin color, hair texture, facial features, bald face lie,
Right.
right?
It is.
Bald face lie.
And what race did is set us up to misrepresent ourselves. It created a
Right.
well. First of all, I think this the reason why this problem exists on this level that it does among all people is the fact that physical oppression took place. Right.
Mm,
So you had a
right.
period of physical oppression. We cannot ever overlook that and what it sold into my ancestors for a certain period of time until it became habit.
Right.
And then it became a part of their nervous system. And then
Right.
when it became a part of their nervous system, then that was passed on through the bloodline for generations. So the idea that we can't be honest, even now when there's no physical threat to our lives, still impacts us. And we still second guess the idea that showing up as our authentic self is more important than showing up inauthentic, right?
Mm,
We still second guess it. And the thing is, what us being in a society, not living our accurate life, not giving our accurate location, then we created relationships of people not living theirs. And then there were the Europeans who practiced not telling their accurate location, like as a part of a strategy, right?
right.
Because
Hmm.
when Europeans first came and landed on now we call North America,
Hmm.
the Native Americans had not known misrepresentation.
That's right.
They had not known inaccurate representation of self because there was no reason to. They lived in nature, they were one with nature. The Europeans came and used inaccurate representation or misrepresentation as a strategy, a war strategy to overtake the Native Americans to the point where it's completely almost gotten rid of them completely. But that
Right.
was a strategy, and you have no way of fighting against that strategy if you've never come against a lie in the first place. So if nobody ever lied to you before in your life, and then they're telling you something, why would you disbelieve them? Why would you be suspicious of them? You wouldn't be. And the
Right.
proof of that is that the Native Americans and the Europeans signed over 300 treaties,
Right.
300, and the
Right.
Europeans did not keep one.
Not one.
That's how much of a strategy and a war tactic that misrepresentation was. And today it is crushing the society,
Right.
crushing it, burning right as we speak right now because
That's right.
our world is filled with misrepresentation.
MID, and it's not even like a lie from one person to another, but it's when the lies are built into all of our systems and
Yeah,
institutions, right?
yeah,
And that's where, you know, so people are like, well, how are we going to, you know, end systemic oppression, you know, racism or anything else? Because I'm thinking about, as you were talking, I'm like, this is true based on race, but I'm also realizing how true it is. It's so true with gender oppression too, right? The
yes,
gender bias, right? Because we have put women in a position where they have to constantly misrepresent who they are. Even going back to our earlier conversation about changing the picture, you
because of
know, like,
physical oppression.
yeah,
The physical
because
oppression
of
had to
patriarchy,
exist.
because of oppression.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because of the physical oppression. That had to be done first. And then to take the physical oppression away. But the impact of it still lingers in the subconscious mind. So it has
Right.
taken women a while to start beginning to accurately represent themselves. And so what you see now that is really knocking men off their feet is the fact that women are beginning to accurately represent themselves, and men are like, "What the hell?"
Mm,
We're
mm,
like going crazy because women are saying what they really want to say, that they've been
mm.
wanting to say, but wouldn't say because they were afraid of their safety and like physically.
Right.
Because, you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? So now women are coming out, and it's a process when you come out from years of suppressing yourself, from years of holding your truth back, and you start coming out. I mean, it's like you hold on to your hats. If you don't have a relationship with the truth, which is usually in the gray, the truth is really not in the black and white. The black and white is it's the misrepresentation we created, right? The
Right.
world
Right.
of misrepresentation. The gray is where the truth is. And if you don't have some muscles, a constitution to be in the center, to be in the gray, then hold on to your hats because you ain't seen nothing yet.
That's right. No, we're seeing it right now. You're seeing it right now. And you talked earlier about power, right?
Right.
I think the biggest communication problem is that we have not been coming, none of us have been coming from our place of power. And just to flip it for a second on, coming from the relative advantage side or the privilege side too, it's like no less a lie, right? No
Oh,
less a lie to be in the role of the oppressor, or be, what's the word I'm trying to think of, to be like aligned, to be aligned with the oppressor, like honestly, and then to have these messages that we hear about ourselves every day as white folks. We talk about this all the time. If you're told lies about yourself, which is the lie that we're smarter, we work harder, all these lies that we're told about ourselves based on whiteness, it's also incredibly damaging, and it makes it incredibly difficult for us to ever like really truly sit and in alignment with ourselves. Because like I would just say that we have lost sight and lost track of who we really are because we've believed those lies about ourselves. It's a lot easier to believe a lie. I think it takes time, but it takes less time to believe that lie about yourself that you're better than, but it creates just as much internal conflict.
well, I mean, but also you think about this. What is that doing to you? Let's talk about
Yeah,
white people for a minute, right?
let's
And
do it.
them having to hold up that lie.
Hmm.
'Cause, you know inside yourself that you're not better because of your skin color. You know that you are not more valuable. You know this because of your skin color, but you buy into this lie.
Right.
What impact does it have on you when you see people of color surpassing you in certain areas, and that doesn't hold to the test, you being better because of your skin color? You see them being smarter than you in certain areas. You see them outperforming you in certain areas.
Yeah.
What is the message then that you have to deal with because you've bought into this lie, which is not based in reality? So you have to demonize people of color. You have to,
Yeah.
your fear has to then become like on steroids because you're hyper afraid
Yeah.
of people of color, and you create more stories inside yourself to protect yourself from something that's not even needed to be protected against. Meanwhile, your potential is not being developed because you
Right.
are being distracted from your own power and the potential inside yourself that needs to be developed because you have what? You have doubled down in investing in the lie.
That's right. No, 100%. And if you have positional power, which as white folks, most of us, do, and certainly I'm thinking, as you were talking, like Black Wall Street, Greenwood district of Tulsa came like, very much into my consciousness because that's exactly what white people saw. Black people creating their own Wall Street, their own economy, owning their own
Yes,
bus service, owning
yes.
their own airplanes,
And it's
everything, right?
frighten the hell
It
out of
was
you.
it was
Frighten the hell
frightening. It was frightening, and also it was like the answer to your question is one of the things that happens is if you refuse to stop and say, like, we all have moments like this in our lives. We all have moments where the external world asks us to take a moment, take a deep breath, and do some serious self reflection, right? Like really
right,
reflect on yourself and like, well, what's going on with me? Like these
right.
folks just came out of chattel slavery, real estate slavery, and they're
And
and
you're
they're
messing this up.
they're living better than me, right? And instead of Mahdi, instead of saying, "Wow, this system has really fucked me up too," right? Because this system is not keeping me in with my potential. Instead of saying that, instead of saying, "Wow, there's really something wrong here with the system," it's like, no, we got to get them back below us, and we got to do it by any means necessary.
and
That
you know what, Martin?
that level of sickness, man.
Yes,
Yes,
and we have not dealt with Europeans, white people have not dealt with the fear factor within themselves,
never,
right?
never.
So the anger, the hostility, and the high level of violence you see from white people historically has been about their
Yes.
fear and their own insecurity of themselves because they have been taught to live their lives in comparison to people of color. And anytime you live your life in comparison to anyone, you are not going to equal up to you because the only thing you can be equal to is yourself. But if you're comparing yourself to another self, then you already you lost. You're in
Oh
Alice
yeah,
in
yeah, yeah,
Wonderland. You're going down the rabbit
yeah,
hole.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
white people really need to deal with their fear. What are you really afraid of? What are you really having a society that's based upon a foundation of equity? Why does that scare you?
Yeah.
I mean, really, why does that scare? What deep level fears that you haven't dealt with is awakened in you from the idea of people having equity.
You know what it is, my D, and you and I have talked about this before on different podcasts. The piece that we miss all the time, and I've heard you say it, really overtly, and I have too, is that what's missed is that before we were white, we were also colonized, and we had a relationship with the land. We had relationships with each other that were not the same as what whiteness asks us to do. And so I think the biggest fear is that we have to look inside ourselves and realize how much we've been colonized, to realize how much we're separated from our authentic self. I'm talking generationally, like,
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of generations. I'm talking about for some of us, tens of generations. But I mean, I think the greatest fear is really knowing how much we've been damaged by whiteness ourselves. That's the real fear, to see how really, like, how much work we have to do to get right.
I would agree that it's deeply rooted in Europeans who became white. And what happens is that people get distracted by the political distractions, like critical race theory they throw out there to have people and they
Mm,
stir up people's fears. And
yes,
like this conversation at all does not at all move the needle with human development at all.
that's right. That's right.
So we at some point you have to deal with the lies that have been told. You're not going to be able to get around it because the universe is equaling things
Mm,
up. The universe is
mm,
equaling things up. You ain't got to do nothing. As a person of color, I never even entertained the idea of revenge or the idea of getting back. It's a waste of time. The universe is equaling things up all the time. So all you have to do is wait and keep living your life, the best life you can live. So salvation for white people is getting equal to. In other words,
mhm.
accurately
Yes.
representing the truth and getting right with the truth. The idea of doubling down on this, you're not going to beat the
Mm,
universe. You can get all the guns you want. You're not going to win.
that's right. And I mean, I think you're saying it so clearly, and I think it's a great way to close out our part one here. But I think you're saying it so clearly right now, Madi, and I'm feeling it so strongly. And that is that, the key here is for us to see that whiteness is built on a lie. And if you choose to double down on that lie, that is self-destructive behavior. The only way to get out of self-destructive behavior. You asked me why I felt so relieved when Felicia asked me to tell her everything about myself and leave nothing behind. It was so liberating for me to tell the truth. I find it so liberating to tell the truth about whiteness. I find that so liberating. And I feel for people that don't. I feel for people that feel that they have to double down, triple down, quadruple down on a lie to feel good and to feel all right about themselves. I get it. I really do, because I feel it inside of me. And this idea that somehow, like, the liberal, progressive, woke left, that we're so hard on people. First of all, most of us haven't really done this work ourselves anyways, but we're so hard on people who don't see a way out of the lie and instead feel like we have to double down on the lie, triple down, quadruple down. I feel for folks. I do. I really do. And I know that that's the path to liberation. The path to liberation is to admit, first of all, to see it. Because a lot of times in our personal lives, we don't admit, we can't even see the problem to admit it. And all we're trying to do is say that we've got to see the problem, we've got to admit it, and that's our true path to liberation.
I would say this on a spiritual level. There was a certain period of time that was allotted by the universe for us to study the lie,
Hmm.
because there was an argument in humanity on the spiritual level about whether or not the lie had validity. And so there were those who said we had to let it have its way, give it a certain period of time to do its thing, study it so that we can purge it from the family, the human family.
Yes.
Now, what is happening now is that the universe is shifting back to backing the truth and only the truth. So
Hmm.
those who have an adverse effect to the truth, in other words, you're afraid of it, you're afraid to come into the light, you are not going to succeed, and you're going to see
Right.
more people succeeding who embrace their truth. And the truth that people embrace from themselves don't have to satisfy you. You're not the standard for another person's life. And I'm not just talking about white people. I'm talking about all people. No,
Yes.
you are not the standards for anybody else's life. My truth is what I have to come here and live. You trying to cancel me because I'm living my truth is not going to work. See, that is a result of us not dealing with the truth either. Because the reality is, all of us are still in process. We're still growing. And if you're going to look back into my past and see stuff that I did, of course you're going to find stuff that I did that was not in alignment with who I was or who I am. And today you're going to look at improvements. You're going to look at evolution. That is life.
Right.
The idea to want to cancel a person because you look back in their life and found something that they did, and you should be looking for how did they transform? How did they transform? Because that's truth. All of us, that's what real redemption is. And redemption is this idea that you could come back from the lies that you told and embrace the truth and be transformed. That's what the idea of being born again and religion is. There's so many of these concepts in organized religion and in the spiritual walk of life. And we don't live it at all. And right now we need it more than we ever needed before. Because if people are going to come into the light, they have to understand and know that there's a place for them in the light versus in being in the dark.
Mm. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That was exactly right on. And I'm with you so much. Having gone through this process and going through it now, like currently going through it now, sometimes it feels more challenging at the beginning to live in that light and to live the truth because you're so used to it. Going back to what we said earlier, our communication, all of this stuff in our lives it's habitual. Yeah. And when you quit a habit, we're addicted to it. When you leave an addiction, when you quit a habit, it feels really hard at first.
Yes.
And anybody listening,
you have to replace it. Actually, you can't really. Right. You have to replace it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what we're saying. We're saying replace that lie with the truth.
Exactly.
Replace all that hate with love. Replace all that division with unity. There's something to replace it with. There's something to replace it with.
Yes. Yes.
Man, this was beautiful. I can't wait for part 2.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited.
I'm excited, man.
If you want to transform your life, then solving the biggest problem of communication, which is inaccurate representation or misrepresentation of your truth, then if you could solve this, if you could start focusing on every area of your life where you're misrepresenting yourself, you begin to start accurately representing yourself, you will transform everything. In the next podcast on this subject, I'm going to be giving you some of the steps, some of the things that you need to focus on in order to accurately represent yourself and come back into your power.
Beautiful, beautiful. Man, thank you, my D.
You're welcome. Thank you, Martin. And thank you all for listening. Keep supporting us.
That's right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Know that we love you and care about you. Know that we're excited to have you on this journey. Go to soulfocusgroup.com. I don't know when in time you're listening to this, but around, in the fall of 2021, we are going to roll out a brand new website with all kinds of brand new offerings. So come to soulfocusgroup.com often and listen to all of our podcasts on all the platforms. And again, we're just so excited to have you on this journey. We ask that everybody stay safe, stay well, and most importantly, stay soul focused.
Yes.